What's good, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Goats of Growth. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. And like always, the J. David Group, which is my company, is sponsoring this episode. We help recruit today's go-to-market teams that will lead the next generation of unicorns. Email me web@thejdavidgroup.com to learn more about how we can help. Now, my guest today is Dustin Gransberry. He's the Vice President of Sales for Pico MES, which is a factory operations platform built for small and medium-sized factories. And I'm sure Dustin will expand on that in a minute. Dustin, welcome to Overquota.
Thanks, Jay. Good to be with you.
So let's just start with what I just ended with there, maybe not so eloquently. Talk to us about Pico MES, the value proposition and the problem that it solves for your customer.
Sure. Yeah. So, I learned a lot after joining this company. I got to say, I'd always known that manufacturing was a thing. Like we build stuff, but I would pick up toys growing up and turn it over and it says made in China, right? Made somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. Recently, we've dealt with some supply chain issues and it started to show up for people. Wait, we can't have cars and trucks. Why is this auto lot bare? Well, we need chips, right? There's all these manufacturing issues that are happening. And it has come to light how much we rely on all this supply chain, things coming in from elsewhere. And there's this recent resurgence in domestic manufacturing or reshoring, right? Bringing stuff out here. So my company, Pico, works with engineering teams in these mid-sized factories, which is the vast majority of them that are out there. Probably haven't heard of them. They're in small towns. And the entire economy of the small towns typically revolves in and around the factory. And they end up being very frustrated by how much time it takes to resolve issues or train operators or figure out what's going on because they don't very much use technology at all. They've got paper records for everything to do it and pretty efficient for how that all comes together, but they're not really using computers. They're not using software. And so that's where Pico comes in and said, okay, it's 2022. It's about to be 2023. Why aren't we using more sophisticated technology? We would be more competitive manufacturing in this country if we were to use technology. So to address the challenges that these engineering teams are facing and these factories are facing, we built a digital work instruction platform that shows those that are actually building the products that are being manufactured in this country and connecting those with the physical tools and the machines in their plants. And what that does is allows for real-time error prevention, right? So instead of waiting for some critical inspection step to happen or something happens long afterwards and you see in the news a recall happened, right? It's happening while it's being built. You've got automatic connection to all the tools and the machines, and you don't need an integrator. It's actually really expensive to integrate all these sophisticated tools that are available. And that's why most mid-sized factories don't have them. And then full part traceability. So imagine having the ability to say, this car, this truck, this part, we know all of the different component pieces that went into it. We know what operator was working on it. We know what work instruction set they had, which version it was. We know every single element that went into the build, and we can trace down errors. And because we can do that, we can become much more effective as an organization. We can become much more profitable and end consumer benefits because the cost of goods goes down ultimately.
Absolutely. Thank you for explaining that. There's a couple of things that I wrote down just to follow up on to clarify. Define mid-size for me. What's a mid-size factory? What's the proxy for size there?
Yeah, a few hundred employees in the facility, right? So we're not talking Toyota or BMW or Ford. We're talking the suppliers that maybe they make the transmissions for those companies.
Got it. Okay. And the other word, something else I wrote down there was evangelizing. I would imagine that, and this gets us into the conversation about team building and what have you, but I would imagine that when you're reaching out to folks who are used to doing things in, let's just face it, like an antiquated, archaic way where things are on paper, they're not using technology or software, any of these things, there's a lot of evangelizing that has to go on, right? A lot of educating, if you will, right?
Sure. I don't want to come across as a jerk, right? People are comfortable with the way that things have always been done.
Yeah.
Right? The status quo is comfortable. But there are reasons to do things differently, and it does require evangelism in order to get there, because you don't know what options are available to you until somebody brings them to you.
So how do you do that? How do you begin to educate someone who, frankly, doesn't even know that these options exist before someone on your team reaches out to them and starts talking to them about it?
Yeah.
But then also, presumably, if they're not looking for it, then they're not maybe that desirous of change, right? So then you need to get them to think about change and then change. So
Yes.
walk me through that process. And then I want to talk to you about how to identify, because I know that two of your initiatives coming on to Pico and over the next several years is scaling the team and scaling customer growth, right? And you're not going to be able to scale the team if you can't identify the right skill set and then to onboard, coach, and train your people in order to do these things. So talk to me about what's needed in order to evangelize, and then we'll get into making sure that you have the right people around you to scale.
Yeah, those are great questions.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thinking about sort of go-to-market strategy, we've got three primary channels. The first is direct sales, or an outbound evangelism type of a path, where we are introducing the idea that there's a different way to do things that our prospects might not have been aware of. Mm-hmm. Second channel is marketing. So those that come to our website, they might be looking for a solution. They're looking to get off of legacy solutions that are out there, because we're a new version of what has historically been done, either with paper. There's a lot around this industrial 4.0 movement, which you're now using data and technology. But so somebody might be looking for something. Often we will get our leads through a trade show where somebody can come talk to us, right, shake our hands, take a look at what equipment, hardware, and software we have, be hands-on with it. And then the third is through our channel partnerships. So there are manufacturing reps that sell tools, right? So the new factory just got a new contract awarded to them. They are now going to build, I used automotive and transmissions. That's not all we work with, right? But I used that example before. So imagine this transmission manufacturer got awarded a large contract from, say, a Ford or Toyota. Now they need to build a bunch of product, and they're going to go spin up a new production line. They're going to go buy tools and machines in order to do that. And the reps that sell those, the companies that employ the tool sales reps, have good insight for us as to, okay, here's a new project. They might now be open to software. So we've got that channel play as our third avenue. By far and away, evangelism or direct sales is the majority of our go-to-market strategy right now. I like working with sales reps that don't mind making cold calls, sending cold emails, and initiating a conversation. You know that you're going to get some level of resistance when you're introducing a new idea, but I think that that's fun personally. That's how I came up in sales. So I like working with people that don't mind, the rejection that you're going to get, and battling through that and opening people's eyes. It's great when you see a light bulb go off in somebody who thought that they were doing everything just fine. And it's awesome when 6 months later they call you and say, I'm so glad you called. We would not be in this place if you hadn't hit me up on this.
Right. You mentioned you came up in sales that way. Talk to me a little bit about that before we get into what you're looking for and how you're able to develop your own team. When you say you came up in sales that way, what did you learn? What do you remember about making those calls and then discovering, to your point that you just mentioned, right, the aha moment, and then having customers thank you for that? Like, was it a particular way that you communicated through messaging or on the phone? Is there a particular, methodology or technique that you developed over time? Bring me into the tactical of Dustin Gransberry when you were developing your own sales acumen and developing over time.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick background. So it's a little unique how I came up. I'm thinking, to answer your question, I'll tell you about my first post-college sales job where I was, straight up cold calling all day long. But I really started in sales around age 5 when my dad said, go knock on doors. He was a salesperson. So I was selling cookies and candles and fruit off of a neighbor's trees. And, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I'm little, maybe I'm cute. I don't know. I had more hair then. I was knocking on doors, open up a catalog. What would you like to buy? Right? Innocent.
Yep.
Fast forward, now I'm graduated. I've done several other things, including international logistics and some finance roles. And I find myself in sales because I knew that I wanted to take an inbound sales job. Why? You're going to get more exposure to more prospects, more potential customers faster than you would if you're doing outbound sales, which I had done previously. And it was pure cold calling all day long. And I knew that I was going to hate it, but I had to do it anyway because I really wanted to get good at it. So choose the most difficult thing you can possibly do, right? Cold call people all day long. And I was selling digital advertising solutions at the time. And the idea was call somebody and within the span of 10 to 15 minutes, get them to give you their credit card and lock them up for at least a year commitment and thousands of dollars.
Sounds easy.
It was brutal. It felt like Survivor in that we would have 30 people hired at a time. And within a month, we would have less than half of that. And within 2 months, you might have 2 or 3 people left. And I was honestly, Jay, I was pretty terrible when I started, right? I'm too analytical and too nice and too compassionate and very closely listening to all of the rejections, all of the pushback and the buying resistance that people normally have. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, right? And I'm agreeing with them, everything that they have to say about why they don't want to buy. I ended up leaving as one of the top salespeople at that company and setting, all kinds of records because I figured out how to get good at it, right? And I think selective listening, you have to be a very good listener in order to succeed in sales, but you need to listen selectively and understand why people are saying what they're saying more than just understanding what it is that they're saying. I know that you're scared. I know that you're not wanting to make a mistake. I know that if you give me your money, then you don't have that to go buy something else, right? If I know all of these things, I need to be anchored in my perspective, which is you're going to be way better off buying this than buying anything else. And I'm here right now. And as soon as I'm gone, you're not going to buy this because I'm going to sell it to somebody else.
Yep, that makes sense. And I would imagine that, well, I won't even imagine. Why did you continue? In other words, when you were terrible at first and not having success, what was it that kept you going? What was it that you, I'm assuming, enjoyed at some level, but talk to me about that.
I mean, I've got old journals where I've just beaten myself up about this, right? Like the end of the day, I'm writing down the notes. What did I learn from today? Made 80 calls, made 100 calls, got rejected a bunch of times, no sales, no good calls, talking with my manager. Is this right for me? Should I even be in this game? It was just, pig-headed determination. It was because I was stubborn. I saw other people succeeding. And I said, if they can do it, I have got to be able to figure this out. Either I'm smart enough to figure this out, or I will stay here long enough to figure it out. One of those two things has got to be true. Because if anybody can figure it out, then it has to be possible for me to figure this thing out. And I really wanted to. I had the encouragement of my dad and a few mentors that said, okay, I don't imagine you're going to do this game forever, where it's only cold calling. You're not really building a pipeline. You're not establishing longer term relationships, generate referrals or anything like that. But you should get good at this. If you can get good at this, then you can control the amount of income that you can make forever. And it's really why I have focused so much on the outbound game in my sales leadership part of my career, why I've spun up so many sales development teams, because that's really the core skill set that you're focused on. How can you, from a cold start, generate interest and get somebody interested in talking about exploring a new solution? If you can do that, it's getting your foot in the door. And a certain percentage of people are going to go farther with that, decide this is something that they want to buy. But it unlocks so much for you. You're not waiting around for somebody else to contribute to you, all right, bringing you leads. You need something from marketing. You need something from somebody else in order to be successful. You decided you're going to take success back into your own hands. So it was really just frustration that I wanted to power through, right?
How about selective listening? Because I think that's important, obviously, right? It's really important. And I think within there is empathy, right? And I know that you just with our pre-conversation and knowing what I know about you, there's a high level of empathy within you, right? How do you, how did you develop selective listening? Was it a mentor? Was it your dad? Was it somebody that said, this is what you need to do, and this is this, and let me define what selective listening is for you, and then you just started to exercise that muscle and you got better at it? Just give me a sense of what that looked like, how you actually developed that and learned it.
Yeah, I wish. I think trying to learn everything I could about sales. So sure, there was mentorship. I follow people like Jim Rohn growing up, Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, many others. Jeff Blunt, will throw that out there, Mike Weinberg. Reading everything I could get my hands on. I remember there were days I would go to the library and I would check out every single book that they had on sales. And I would have running lists of, if there's a book on sales, I want to read it. I want to incorporate that into what I'm doing. And then I would distill the experience that I was having on a daily basis with what I was learning in these books. I just tried to apply everything that I could learn. I was realizing as I went along that I was shooting myself in the foot by believing the surface level story that people were telling me. And they're going to tell you a story. I think, gosh, who was it? There's a quote, I might misattribute this, but somebody said there are two reasons why people do anything. One that sounds good and the real reason. And that clicked with me. I was like, okay, I am just buying the first thing that people are saying. I'm agreeing with that. I'm accepting that that's true. What if I had a healthy amount of skepticism? And I said, is that really true? So it was the development of this curiosity, right? I wanted to better understand, why is it that people buy? Why is it that they don't? What am I doing that is giving them the signal to react to me in this way? And how can I change that?
That's amazing. The reason I say it's amazing is because there's so many. So one of the things I do when I'm, you talk about selective listening. What I always try to do is almost parse what I'm hearing with what the underlying characteristics are, right? And I wrote down growth minded, right? When you talk about the books that you checked out and read, right? To me, that's evidence of growth minded, right? Because I think a lot of people see the end product, right? Dustin Gransberry, right? One of the things, I should tell people is, you've scaled teams from 1 million to as high as 40 million in revenue month over month, and have had teams of 25 that you've led, and just your success has just been fantastic. And I think that people see the end product and like, oh, okay, yeah, of course Dustin is successful. He's just kind of always been there, and forget about the evolution. But then also don't really think about, here are these points of success and what you're sharing, but don't think about the fact that, okay, growth minded, check. Curiosity, check. Empathy, check. Journalism. That, to me, that's like introspective and self-assessing, right? It's like, check. All those things are right there. I want to go to journaling for a moment, because to me that's extremely interesting. First of all, how long do you still journal? Number one, how long have you been journaling? And I don't know, quantify that for me in terms of the volume of notes, I guess, or journals that you've had over time.
Yeah. I remember about early influences and checking out books at the library, and coming across this public speaker, Jim Rohn. And he said, look, if you're living and you're not journaling, you're missing it, right? You have these thoughts. You just need to capture how you're thinking and how you're feeling on paper, somehow, some way, record that. You'll look back on it and say, like, wow, that was really insightful. Like, I learned something at that time. Or, wow, I used to be an entirely different person. And I can say that that's true for me. I think that a decent amount of my book collection now are these journals. I tend to buy leather-bound journals. They're not always the same. I've gone back and forth from the super nice ones to the super cheap ones. I've had my share of yellow legal pads, but it's really just trying to get out of your own head. I think a lot of people will carry an unnecessary amount of stress by recycling same thoughts over and over again in their head. And if you can just externalize it, and it doesn't take long, get it down on paper, put it out. You can even use the notepad in your phone, right? Every smartphone has some kind of a notes application. Get your thoughts down. Ask yourself questions. Most of the running talk track people have in their heads is you asking yourself questions and coming up with answers.
Hmm.
And I learned a while back that the better quality questions I could ask myself, I would lead myself to better answers and a better trajectory in life. So journaling started for me probably a year or so after I graduated high school. And I got out of the phase of I needed to learn because I was being told to, and I had to be there. And if I didn't go to school, then my parents would go to jail, like something like that, to learning is now a total choice, right? I'm an adult now. You are responsible for your own education. How are you going to get it? What's important to you? What do you want to learn? Journaling was my way of capturing that, right? It's kind of my own like personal homework for life.
And now, as a sales leader, you are a teacher, right? So you're not just a student, which clearly you're a lifelong student of the game, but you're also a teacher. And one of the things that was fascinating to me, just to get into building teams and scaling customer growth, is as I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, your about stuck out to me a lot, because it wasn't like most about pages. And I'm not sure exactly how long ago you wrote it, because sometimes we write them and we forget about them for years. I just rewrote mine, frankly, a couple months ago, because it had been the same for I don't know how long. So I went and rewrote it. But yours is basically, it's like an open letter, if you will, to your future potential team members, right? People that may be one day wanting to work for Dustin or working with Dustin Gransberry, whether it's at Pico or wherever. Talk to me about your ability to recruit, hire, and then more importantly, I think, onboard and develop people to do the things that you've done to become better, growth-minded, empathy, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I will say that it is sort of an open letter, right? At least if I can remember back to what I wrote however many months ago it was. The idea for me is always, I like to work with sharp and ambitious, growth-minded people. I do. And not everybody takes to that. Some people think that they are those characteristics, and they get into an environment. Like a lot of people sign up to go do hard challenges, right? They want to, run a 10K, or maybe they sign up to be a Navy SEAL. Well, not everybody makes it, right? You sign up for hard things, and few people make it through the gauntlet. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of attracting people who want to work hard and to develop themselves. I see sales as a great environment for personal development, as well as, economic prosperity. You're helping your company, you're helping yourself and your family, making good money. All of that is true. But personal growth is really what attracted me to sales and why I'm still in it. So I look for people that want to be on that growth trajectory. This is one of the most fascinating and valuable aspects of life, is that personal growth. So, everyone that I have ever worked with has had their own set of personal goals. And as a sales leader, I think that my job as a coach, mentor, is to come alongside each of the reps that I work with, better understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and help brainstorm with them and work together with them on a plan to achieve what it is that they want to achieve personally and professionally. I work pretty proactively with each rep that comes onto my team to develop a plan. And some of them will stick with it. Other times they need an accountability partner, and I play that role. And some of them will move on to other opportunities. And that's fine, just because that's the nature of life. That's how things go. I will say, though, that the growth-minded aspect that you brought up before is a hallmark for the people that I work with and I'm most successful working with, right? Those that really want to take their career and their life to the next level.
Is there a way to identify that, in other words? Because I think that, getting the right people on the bus initially is certainly a lot easier than, having, let's say, the wrong people on the bus and then trying to coach them up and develop them and all that, right? So when you're looking for growth-minded people, right? How do you...
That's a recruiter, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Call me. How do you do that? Like, what are some of the things that you're looking for to say this is evidence of a growth-minded individual, the way I just did with you when you were... The books obviously are a perfect example, but what do you do?
Yeah. Gosh, it's a tough. I've got an entire rubric that I go through for an assessment that I'm looking for in the candidates that I'm talking to. I believe in some of the approaches like the top grading, where you're looking at previous experience and examples of things that people have done as evidence of what they're going to do. I remember coming across a psychology study, and it said the best predictor of future results is past performance. It's not always the case. And sometimes I will make a bet on somebody thinking that's a diamond in the rough, right? That's someone who I think, right, she can do this. She hasn't been given the right opportunities, but I see something in her. More often than not, though, you look for excellence in their sales career. Have they produced? At what level have they been given promotion or more opportunity? Have they been asking for more responsibility? Have they taken on new roles? Have they gone to bigger and better companies? Have they gone, say, from sales development to account executive to enterprise account executive, for example, right? Those are some of the things that I look for, but mostly it's the intangibles, right? Do they have grit? You're going to have to deal with adversity. No matter which sales job you do, there is adversity there. You have the luxury of being told you need to go do something without a sure path of how you're going to get it done. Go produce X number of dollars. Okay, great. Right? How are you going to make that happen? You've got to have a measure of faith and be able to bet on yourself that you can produce results, because that's the job. So I look for people that have had dealt with some level of adversity in their life, that have learned something through that process and have come out better for it on the other side. And they could use the toolkit that they developed in that experience to apply to the sales profession, because they're going to need it.
Yeah, part of that toolkit that I say when you overcome challenges, part of what's in that toolkit is often confidence, which is important, right? And confidence that the next challenge that you face, it's just an obstacle that you can certainly overcome because you've been there before, right? You've overcome other obstacles before. This is just another one. That's where that resilience comes in, to stick to it, right? And to keep going. Tell me about, you mentioned proactively working with your new team members to develop a plan for them, if you will, right? What do you mean by that? What does that look like when you're working with them proactively to do that?
Yeah, I think as a sales leader, if you're designing a program, maybe you've delegated this to a sales trainer or sales training group, but I sort of came up through this, right? When I went into sales leadership, it was through sales operations, sales training, sales enablement. So I have that in the back of my mind all the time. How is the onboarding experience going to be for a new rep? You need a couple of weeks, whether it's classroom style instruction or introduction. If you're on a remote team, for example, classroom is not an option, but you need to meet everybody on the team. You need a baseline understanding of the industry and the product and how things are going to work, what tools you've got available to you. I typically will design an extensive checklist of things that people need to go through. Here are the resources that you need. Here's the information you need to consume. And in the first couple of weeks, we need to distill all of this information into something that you have perspective on, right? I'm always looking to develop the sales reps that I have to have a perspective. I think this connects back to the selective listening. You have to have a perspective in order to sell, I think, at a professional level. Otherwise, you're just regurgitating other people's words. If you can't connect the dots between why you're saying what you're saying, they're just words that somebody else told you to say. You might be able to say them convincingly with confidence, but they won't resonate with the other person. And if you get asked any level of question that has depth to it, you're going to fall apart. And that will shatter your confidence, and there's a downward spiral there. So I'm trying to build this foundation where people understand what it is that they're talking about, what it is that they represent. They understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then we can go deeper from that point, right? So the Simex Cynic is start with why, then you go through what, and then you get to how. We structure our sales talk tracks in that same way. I think that that's just the natural mode that people go through to learn, right? Why do I need to know this information? Okay, what is it and how does it work? I work through the new rep onboarding process in the same way, right? Let's build these foundations of knowledge so that you have something stable that you can attach all the other details that you're going to pick up along the way. Frankly, any new sales job is overwhelming. The amount of information that you have to consume, most likely, if you're in tech sales at least, the product is going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging to understand all the nuances that you need to know about the marketplace, the industry, and how to represent this in the best possible way for you to be successful. And everybody wants to be successful straight out of the gate. It's probably going to take about 6 months before you really start to feel comfortable and you have some wins under your belt. And if you get quick wins, all the better. So my objective is to get somebody quick wins as fast as possible, but we start the quick wins with their education, right? How do you get to the point where you're learning something every day and you set the standard of what is a successful day based on what did you learn as opposed to what did you sell? Did you have a success during this day? I like better, did you have a failure? Did you fall down? Did you scrape your knee? Did you learn something from that? Are we not going to do that again? Right? We're now on a much better trajectory than you're seeking that perfection path that academics will train you to, where you need to get an A, you have to score as high as possible on the test the very first time that you take it. I think for salespeople, you gravitate to an arena where you have unlimited do-overs. Okay, that one didn't go well. That was a train wreck. Let's listen to that call, take away the things we can learn from that, and move on to the next one.
Well, maybe not unlimited do-overs, but certainly multiple do-overs nevertheless, right? So tell me about that then. Tell me about, because, obviously when you're scaling a team and you need to scale it rapidly, especially when you're in a venture-backed startup and the goal is to triple, double, you need to be able to add team members at a consistent and rapid pace, but then also, like what we were just talking about, you have to onboard, coach, and develop them to a point where, obviously the company is continuing to make money and the revenue is going up and to the right. So how do you begin to scale once you have this foundation of, okay, like here we know that we need people that have these characteristics. We know who our market is and how these characteristics map well to the people that we're selling to, right? You've got all that stuff. Then how do you go from, 3 reps to 10 reps to 20 reps over the course of, a year or however long you have to get it done?
Yeah. There are multiple phases of that journey. I think about most companies as they're starting, they've got a founder-led sales program. Whoever has developed the product or worked on the product most intimately, probably who's raised money, is the chief salesperson at that time. And then you move into this phase where you need to recruit Renaissance reps or deep evangelists that connect with the product, that connect very strongly with the why. From there, the next tranche of growth, and you're probably Series A, Series B if you're a venture-backed startup, or you've got a solid customer base where you now know from economies of scale and from what you've learned over the customers that you have and the losses that you've incurred along the way, where to focus and where not to focus. At that point, I think you can bring in reps that are going to be more specialized. You're probably breaking into much more role specialization in this third phase. You're bringing in sales development. You might have sales enablement, sales managers, account executives at different tiers if you've got segments of the market that you're going after, or channel sales in our case. And then after that, the fourth phase is really where I think you hit large scale. At that point, everything based on unit economics. If we bring in X number of reps, percentage of them are going to be successful. I know most organizations are looking at 100% of the reps are not going to be 100% successful 100% of the time. So you hedge your bets and you say, we need, X number of people in seat. They're going to go through onboarding. It's going to take this long before they make contribution. And you're running things at sort of a dashboard level. But my current company is at a much earlier stage. And I've gone through this journey a few times to see how it changes. The type of person that you bring onto the team tends to change, right? I would say if you're looking for a job in sales, you got to know what type of an environment you want to be in that will help you to succeed the most, right? What is an ideal environment for you to grow and thrive in? Do you need a situation where things have been largely figured out and it's paint by numbers? It's hard, but the work is basically laid out for you. You're probably going to make less equity and less of an overall impact on the organization because you're one of many. But if you want to have that impact, then there's going to be a lot more things that have yet to be figured out. And you're probably going to be the one figuring it out. It could be more frustrating depending on your personality type and what you're looking for. Did that answer your question? You probably want to go deeper there.
Well, I naturally always want to go deeper, but yes, it did answer my question. But let me just say this or ask this. You mentioned the obviously the profile changes as the company changes, as things grow, as you grow. The folks that have a deep tie to the product, as you say, right? Like they understand the value proposition really intimately, almost just passionate about it. Do they need to, or actually, I guess at any stage, certainly when you're early, do they need domain and industry expertise? Does that make it easier and better for you, or does it matter because you're looking more for, as you said earlier, a lot of the intangible stuff? Talk to me a little bit about that.
I'm always looking for the tangible stuff. That's a through line, no matter where you're at in terms of company growth, because I think it makes for a more resilient human being, and you have to have a level of resilience in sales.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the phase of company growth, right after founder-led sales and before you're into kind of hyper scale mode, having figured out your go-to-market strategy. This period where you need more of the Renaissance reps, they're willing to do multiple things and try different things and run experiments. Domain expertise and certainly interest helps tremendously. So I remember a company I worked for a while ago called Convoy, right? It's in the trucking space, digital freight matching. And the reps that we brought in had freight experience. They understood trucking, they understood the language, because each industry has its own language and its own nuances, allowed them to connect better and easier with their prospects than those that were coming in cold. They just had less of a learning curve. If you're coming in without that domain expertise, the learning curve is going to be much, much steeper. It might take you longer in terms of your ability to hit quota and make an impact and all of those things. Mostly it's the affinity though. If you're interested in it, I worked with somebody in this company where, it's trucking, right? And he would go all day, he's working in trucking, talking with truckers, and he would go home. And you know what he does in his free time? He plays a trucking simulator video game. Like, he's so into it, right? If you're so into it, it's probably a good match, because it's going to just be a natural curiosity. You want to know how things work. You're willing to take the machine apart, see all of the connection points and how it all fits together. So yeah, I think it helps massively if you have some level of interest. If you can't connect with that, then you at least need to connect to why. So, for example, the mission of my organization, we want to improve the lives of the engineers and the operators who actually build things in this country. It matters. If we're going to stay out of a recession, it's likely going to be largely due to manufacturing, because we're doing a lot more manufacturing now, and we're going to continue doing that. And we're now reshoring a lot of things that were previously done in China, like chip manufacturing, right, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to improve the lives of the engineers and the operators that are actually doing this work, because it's not super fun work. They put out fires all day. It's just, it's kind of crazy. So if you can't connect with the industry, or you don't have that background domain expertise, then maybe you connect with the mission. Do you care enough about, helping the American economy? Do you care enough about the impact of having a community thrive, because everybody that works at this small town factory is now getting paid more and they have more job stability and all of those things? Or is there something that resonates there? That then can be a catalyst for you to dive in and learn everything that you need to know. Because it's essentially, they don't tell you this, right? You sign up for a sales job, there's probably the equivalent of a large textbook, or more than one, that you have to consume, memorize, and be able to regurgitate like you're the professor of a class. But everybody's focused on like, I'm going to make big money. Okay, but you have to learn a lot in order for you to be able to do that. You're going to have to learn a lot before you're very comfortable in all these situations where the stress level is going to be high and your brain's going to short circuit, and then you feel like you have marbles in your mouth. But if you've got mastery over what it is that you're talking about, then that won't faze you as much.
Let me ask you about this point of view. Speaking of point of views, I've talked to a couple of sales leaders who have said that, and actually, I think even a couple on this podcast in particular, who have said that they've hired in this phase that you're talking about, customer success folks and product managers, because they want to know what the customers are really looking for, what they're thinking, all of the hot buttons and everything underneath, I guess, if you will, so that and the people who have come from customer success or who are product managers are more inclined to be curious and to ask the questions to get the right answers. And in some cases, there's a woman who I had on the podcast actually who said that ignorance is bliss, right? Because they ask better questions, right? In other words, they aren't coming with a certain point of view about your industry or about your product from a particular company that they've had in the past. And they're actually not only asking better questions, but they're actually listening more. And as a result of that listening, they're asking even better questions. What are your thoughts on that perspective?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. You would also want those people who are curious and asking great questions to either be running through something like, Gong or Chorus or Otter, something where you can extract that information, or they've got to be great note takers and can translate their experience and what they learned into a system. Because if you're going to scale a company, you have to build a system, right? It's not an individual person that's going to make for a large company or a big success. So I think it's a great idea. I believe more in the approach of training salespeople, not to be like lawyers or cross-examine people in that way, but lawyers will ask questions where they know the answer already, or they probably know the answer. But they're going to ask that question anyway, having a hypothesis in mind that they're not going to state, asking the question, finding out how well it matches up with what they were thinking. I just presented you with the best possible price because I know that my price is the lowest, and I'm going to ask how well you like the price that I just presented to you. I want your reaction, right? I'm going to ask that question, not because I don't know anything or I'm just generally curious. That can add some value if the prospect can connect all of the dots themselves. But what you lack there is the sales rep needs to be able to guide somebody down a path, especially if you're doing an evangelism type of a sale like the one that we're doing. They don't know everything. If they did, they would have, salespeople are essentially irrelevant at that point. They would just come to us and ask to buy, and I would connect them directly with customer success. Drastically would reduce our cost of doing business if we had to do that, but it's not practical. Right. The salespeople add tremendous value by helping people understand problems at a different level. I didn't even realize that was an issue that we could do something about. Now it's something that I can't stop thinking about, like a grain of sand in an oyster. Right. And their job, turn that into a pearl, right? This is now something that becomes amazing. We can do something about, and it's way better than it was before. You've got to be able to guide somebody. I think this is my perspective, right? You got to be able to guide somebody on a path that goes to a logical outcome. I have seen the customer success approach work, but you need savvy people that can guide rather than just ask questions because they're curious. I think if you're just generally curious, someone in sales development or CS are about at the same level there. And I want people at those entry-level jobs to ask all kinds of questions. At some point, though, they want to take a step up in their career, and they're going to take what they've learned and say, okay, 80+% of people are on this path. And I want to find out if there's an outlier here, but you're probably marching down this path. I'm going to verify the assumptions that I already have with what you're saying. And now I can add value to the conversation by asking you questions that cause you to have new connection points, new insight into what you're currently doing. I think that's sort of the backdrop of the challenger sale to a degree, right? Where you're teaching them something. If the CS team or product manager can teach along with asking questions, then they're going to be adding value to their prospect. If they're just extracting information purely, right? Then it's all about you and not about your customer or your prospect. And I think that's not the best recipe.
You mentioned a couple of things that resonate with me. First of all, I ascribe to the attorney approach. Frankly, I feel like I've done that most of my life. Growing up, my mother said you should be a lawyer. That's number one. Also, I was laughing about the guy with the truck gaming. He's going home. He's playing games on the truck. It's like me at a party. Like every person I meet, I turn into a podcast interview. Or some sort of like I'm into because I'm just natural. Like you don't tell me what you do because we're going to be there for 2 hours. I don't care what it is. I'm just curious about, tell me more. How do you do it? Like all that stuff. So I certainly have the right profession for that because I have the license to just ask a lot of questions to people. You mentioned building systems, and I'm curious about that as well. When you say building systems, what does that mean? What does that look like to you from a I guess, a holistic 30,000 foot view, if you will. And then how do you go about establishing a process or a system that where one isn't there to begin with?
Yeah. In college, I read this book called The Goal, and it's right. You probably read it. You've got
It's on
it
my
on.
book. It's on my bookshelf. Yep, I love
So
that
it's
book.
got
Yeah.
it's got the theory of constraints, right? Any system has a bottleneck or a constraint that is going to limit production, right? So you got input points, you got output points. A sales organization is no different. You've got dollars available, whether through company earnings or through funds that you've raised, venture backed, right, if you will. You can use those funds to go spend on marketing campaigns. You can hire people to do a job. The idea here is you're trying to create a money machine, right? And in the goal, the book, The Goal, it's about a factory. I happen to work in selling factory operations software, so maybe that's top of mind for me. But I think about the construct here is you're building a money machine. You should probably sketch that out on paper first. I'm right now, we're in November here. We're doing capacity planning for this next year. Who are we hiring? How is that all fitting in? When will they make contributions? How many leads do they need to generate? You need to map all of that out on paper, or in my case, an Excel spreadsheet. It's got a list of assumptions. Here's what I'm assuming is true, right? Here's where I'm hedging my bets. Here are the things that I don't know. And I'm modeling things out, right? Each month, I imagined that these things are happening. We're generating this number of leads. We're generating this number of dollars from sales that are completed. We've got these new sales that are happening. We've got these renewals that are happening. Here are the months that we're hiring people. So you're architecting everything that goes together for your sales plan. The better you can visualize that, the better the system is going to go. But you're always checking reality against the map that you've designed for your organization. On top of that, you're looking for ways that you can enable your team. So there, you're looking at things like training, skills development, software programs that can help your reps be more effective at what they're doing, potentially bringing on managers, outside advisors, and the like in order to power this plan.
I'm not sure if people can hear the leaf blowing that's going on. I mean, if they do, I need to apologize, Dustin. If you can hear it, I apologize. Sometimes these people don't care about what's going on in your world. They're going to come on their time. So I apologize for that. How far out are you looking? Right, when you talk about capacity, are you looking at? Because this is November where we're recording this. Are you looking at for the next quarter, for instance, Q1? Are you looking at the first half of the year? Are you looking for the entire year, and then integrating some of the things that you just mentioned in terms of consultants and other assets that you're integrating into the business to make sure that the plan actually is executed?
Yeah, at least a year. I have not been in an organization where we have not had an annual target and then quarterly targets are established through capacity planning. It's sort of a give and take, right? These are the revenue dollars that need to be achieved. What needs to be true in order for us to produce those with a high degree of confidence? And then what's your plan, right? Are you 90% confident? What's that plan look like? Are you 60% confident? What's that plan look like? Do you have a moonshot? Are you only 10% confident you can make that work? Those need to be sketched out, but it's typically an annual model. I've got an idea, though, of what it needs to be for the following year as well, because typically you have to shoot through an existing year to build to the next one. For example, this next year, we'll be bringing on some strategic and some enterprise reps, likely based on the work in progress model that I've got. When will they make contribution? Well, I don't know. It takes on average 9 months for a large enterprise deal to close. If it takes more than 1 month to hire the enterprise rep and it takes 9 months for a deal to close, and you have to factor in their ramp, when will they make contribution to your plan? Probably the next year. So you always have to be building for much further out. I think that a vice president or CRO needs to be thinking years. A director needs to be thinking quarters. A sales manager needs to be thinking, this quarter, this month. Sales rep needs to be thinking, these deals. What deals do I have directly in front of me? How am I managing this day, this week?
Yeah, and there's a whole. I'd love to ask you about developing and motivating, frankly, folks who are, who are struggling to meet their numbers and all that stuff, and even how to maintain or retain people that are doing well, right? The best people. I put a post on LinkedIn today that said that, something to the effect of, your best reps right now have a lot of options this time of year, and that's only going to continue in January. And so what are leaders doing to keep them, right? And to keep them happy and to keep them motivated and all that stuff. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. So we'll have to do a second episode on this for sure. But before we get into the rapid fire 5, just at a high level, I suppose, because I'm ambitious and I like to squeeze every moment I can in. What are you, when I say that to you, because something went off there in your mind when I was talking about retaining the best reps, what comes to mind first? Like philosophically, how do you approach that challenge of making sure that you're retaining your best people?
Number one for me is personal connection. Do you have a personal connection? The reps that I've worked the best with over the years, I have had a connection where they understand there's a reporting relationship in the business. Like they report to me, I'm their boss, but at the same time, we are able to speak to each other more like peers. I want to understand their opinion. I want them to understand my opinion. We can talk about something. We might disagree, and then we'll commit to what the outcome is, but there's a deep connection there with the person. And I think that engenders loyalty, and people are going to stick around. If it's just money, I don't know, there's always somebody that can make a bigger offer, but do you care about the culture? Do you care about the mission? Do you care about the people that you're working with? That's probably the biggest anchor.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. For sure. It's good to hear you say that. Okay. Are you ready for the rapid fire 5?
Rapid fire 5. Let's go, Jay.
All right, let's go. Number 1, what motivates you?
Family, first and foremost. I got 2 young kids at home and a wife that I love. I need money in order to provide the life that I want to provide for them. Personal growth. I think that good work is its own reward.
How old are your kids?
I have a 3.5-year-old named Jack, and I've got a 9-month-old baby girl named Clara.
All right. Name a big goal you have right now, and when would you like to accomplish it?
I've got a book that I've been working on for a little while. I'm hoping to have it published this next year.
What do you have a name yet?
Yeah, but I don't want to say it.
I was like that too. All right. What's your most preferred way to learn new information and to stay sharp?
I think podcast and Audible, if I'm driving, is I turn my car into that, auto university. I read every day. I just devour books. I've got books hanging out behind me, and always arguing with my wife about how we need more space for them.
And your journals, I'm assuming, at some point. You're going to need a wing for those things. How many hours of sleep do you average per night?
I wish it was more than 6. Sometimes I've got sick kids like I do right now, so it's less.
I'm with you there. What's your favorite thing to do when you aren't working?
Cooking, eating, traveling. When I can, and when I have coverage for the small kids, which is not often right now, I like to get out on a sailboat.
And I have a question from a former guest. I don't know if I talked to you about this, but we have a segment where the previous guest to you wanted me to ask the next guest, in this case you, their question. So let me get out that question, and I will find that question, and I will ask it of you, and then I'm going to ask you what question you would like for me to ask my next guest. All right. So the last question by the way, his name is Captain Steve Hoffman. Captain Hoff is his game name because he's a gamer. But he's the founder of Founders Space. So his question is, if there's one thing you could do differently in your life that you could go back and do differently, what is it, and how would you change it?
Yeah. Would I buy Bitcoin in 2009? I don't know. Gosh, what would I do differently? I think that I would have put more focus on education at a younger age. I really checked out when it came to high school. I ended up going to a good college, but I did not go through the traditional route. I ended up selling my way into school. If I come back to a podcast, I'll tell you that story.
Oh, man.
I think that I could have gone into a much more prestigious school and then gone through grad school programs. I wanted to get into the working world so badly. And then I turned, startups into my laboratory, right? This is my laboratory for growth and personal development and for business. But I think if I could go back, I'd probably pursue an advanced degree.
Great answer. Well thought out. What question would you like for me to ask the next guest?
Well, see, I want it to be something fun. I would like to know, whoever's going to be on here is obviously, they're a GOAT, right? So if you could buy a professional sports team, which one would you buy and why?
I love that. What's that?
Which one would you buy?
Oh, that's easy for me. I mean, I've had this dream my entire life, the Dallas Cowboys, of course.
There we go.
No question about it. That's been on my, you can call it a bucket list or whatever you want to call it, since I was like probably 12 to buy the Dallas Cowboys. So I don't know if Jerry Jones is going to let it go, or that I'll even be able to make that much money ever in my entire life or two lives. But nevertheless, I love that question. Professional sports team. Which professional sports team would you buy? All right, cool. I will ask that question. Last question for you, Dustin, is how can folks reach out to you to say thank you? Perhaps maybe ask a question that I didn't ask, maybe found out how you sold yourself into college, which is a whole nother thing. How can folks find out that answer and just get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm somewhat active. I post something every day. Dustin Gransberry is my handle there. Eventually I'll get onto Twitter and Instagram, but that's the only social that I do. You could also email me directly if you want to, but I think LinkedIn's probably the best way.
You want to give people your email address?
Maybe in the show notes.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, you can give it to me. I'll put them in the show notes for sure. Dustin Gransberry, thank you for being part of the Goats of Growth.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Goodbye, everybody. I am cueing the music.